Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 482, featuring Todd Terrazas, who is the founder of AI LA and has been doing a lot of work in the field of AI for actually a very, very, very long time, much longer than it's been currently talked about. In fact, he talks about some of the early days when he was looking at trying to create AI tools to help automate certain things that were going on in 911 calls. He talks about the shortcomings that he came across at that time, but it was really a way of saying he felt that, some of these tools could enable a lot of things that were very important to go on. So really fascinating conversation along that. He also worked on a lot of things with AI chatbots and what the differences of those are. And we talk a lot about that. Founded AI LA, as I mentioned. Also FBRC.ai, which is something you guys should check out if you're interested in. Just go to fabric.ai, and fabric with no vowels, just FBRIC.ai. Really interesting stuff going on there. He also started AI on the Lot, which is an event that I attended, and I was super excited to be part of. A lot of people were involved in that, but it was really, really cool to see that he's been doing that. Talks about AI and filmmaking quite a bit, and done a lot of research in this area. Gives a lot of caution to people who are interested in these types of tools, but also sort of educates people on the possibilities that are welcome in that area as well. His big takeaway is that he feels that it actually has opened up the doors to more filmmakers through these tools rather than shutting down tools, which really interesting sort of take on how that is. Like you guys know, I've been trying to get a lot of point of views on this on the subject of AI and filmmaking and CG and how it all is going to affect our world. And Todd really gives us a great perspective. I would love to have more people on, especially with differing points of view. Guys, let me know. I've been trying to reach out to Carla Ortiz for a while now. Unfortunately, she seems to be really busy and not been able to talk to me, but I'd really love to be able to get more conversations. And Todd was someone who also mentions during the podcast that he's been trying to have more conversations with more people. So if you guys have more interesting voices, let us know. We'd love to be able to communicate with that. Again, I'll just say it at the end, but remember that you can always email us those suggestions, labs@chaos.com. Again, that is labs@chaos.com. I'm actually starting a little bit out of order. I'm going to tell you guys about a couple of events that are going to be happening soon. All of these can be found at chaos.com/events. The first thing I want to mention is August 29th through the 31st. We will be at D2 in Vienna. D2 is obviously, as you guys know, a very well-known and respected archivist conference that happens in Vienna every year. Very excited that is happening. Again, that is August 29th through the 31st. I also want to mention the Rainbow Conference happening again this year. That is September 5th through the 6th in London. I am very excited about this. Unfortunately, I will not be going to the Rainbow Conference. I have family obligations that don't allow me to go. But the big thing that will be presented there, and I'm very excited about, is the short film that I'll be doing will be having a very, very early sneak peek at it. And those who are going there will be able to see this thing we've been working on called Ray Tracing for the Win, Ray Tracing FTW. It is a short film that I have been producing along with my other friends of mine from Martini Giants, my other podcast that I do. So Daniel, Eric, and I produced this. We did it obviously with Chaos as well. Chaos was the big part of the production of this. But really, it was a way for us to create a short and to utilize Project Arena. And it was the first sort of real world test of Project Arena, and we went all out on it, as you will see in the short. So I'm super excited about this. It's the first time I'm sort of really talking about more openly about it, and it will be previewed at the Rainbow Conference before anyone else sees it publicly. It'll be the first place it'll be seen. So go check that out as well. So again, Rainbow Conference, September 5th through the 6th in London, and you'll be able to see Ray Tracing for the Win that will be there. Again, it is the first thing that we did with Project Arena. Speaking of Project Arena, if you guys are interested in knowing more about what we're doing in the virtual production space, you just go to chaos.com/virtual production, where we if you would like to, if you have a virtual production stage or things that you're interested in looking in that virtual production stage, just sign up and you'll be able to know more, and sort of we'll keep you on the loop in terms of everything that's happening happening in that area. It is Project Arena is our virtual production tool that we've been building for virtual production stages, specifically LED stages, using Vantage. So it is a really interesting tool we've been doing a long time, and it's what we used to create the short that we've made. And it is with, again, with Vantage, which is our real-time ray tracer. Speaking of Vantage, Vantage 2 Update 5 just came out recently, and I'm super excited about it. If you guys want to try Vantage, that you can totally do that as well. Just go to chaos.com for that. Vantage 2 Update 5 includes a VR support using OpenEXR, which is very excited. Also, have our new animated vegetation that has been added to it, which is a very cool tool that's added into Vantage. We also support now shaders with rounded corners, and we have full ACCG support as well, which is very, very cool. So lots of new things happening inside of Vantage 2 Update 5. I also want to talk about Corona 12, which is super exciting. Corona 12 has a lot of new updates as well, including export to Vantage. So yes, if you think about it, through Corona 12, you can go to Vantage, which basically means you'll be able to go to virtual production with Corona, which is pretty exciting. Along with exporting to Vantage, they've also added export to instance scattered instant brushes, also curved decals, and virtual frame buffer 2, which includes Corona EXR or CXR files that allow you to go straight to editing in your Corona image editor, which is very interesting and cool as well. So lots of no updates to Corona 12. Make sure and check it out. All of this can be found at chaos.com. Okay, if you guys want to know more about the podcast, you guys know the podcast page is chaos.com/cggarage. If you'd like to follow us on Facebook, it is facebook.com/cggarage podcast. If you'd like to watch the podcast, all of our videos are at youtube.com/chaosgrouptv, including the podcast. And again, if you guys have suggestions of podcasts, again, like I said, we were looking for anyone, any point of view on the AI stuff that's going on, especially people who have a different point of view than the ones that you feel might have been expressed, that you need to have more points of view. Let us know. labs@chaos.com is our email. labs@chaos.com is our email. All right. But for now, please enjoy episode number 482 with Todd Terrazas.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
Know a little bit about you. Like, how did you get started? I mean, you're obviously a very interesting entrepreneur, but how did you get started and creative technologist, and what got you interested in creative tasks, and what got you interested in technology?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be on this podcast with you. So I'm a kid born and raised here in Los Angeles. My whole family has nothing to do with the entertainment world, but as a young kid, I was enamored with storytelling in movies, and I always wanted to be James Bond or MacGyver or any of these people that were always always had the odds against them, but somehow always saved the day and got the girl kind of deal. And so I wanted to really go to the USC in a really meaningful way, and
to study film or to.
Yeah, I go to study film. So both my parents met at USC, but and obviously USC is the number one film school, and so it being the backyard, I was like, okay, I have to go here. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. I didn't do so well at the end of my high school, so I had to go to community college for the first year, mm-hmm. and then did really well, and then was able to transfer into USC, and then ultimately graduate from USC's film school. And my whole goal was really to be able to go tell my own stories, right? And after college, I worked in production for a little bit, but then got into tech pretty quickly. Even in college, I was helping a friend to run a company called Moblio, which was an early classifieds for like a Craigslist, but for college campuses, right? And so I was always into tech. I'm the youngest of three boys, and my middle brother is the one that was always the tech nerd. And so it kind of rubbed off on me, right? And so yeah, I got into tech really early, and one of our first products was attempting to build an AI 911 operator. And so that was 2015 timeframe when we were using IBM Watson, and pretty much it was 7 months with me and my CTO of learning how much vaporware IBM Watson really was. But that's what got me that's where I got my first taste of working with AI and building a community even around it. And so during that time period, I was building chatbots. We were super early. My company, Brainitch, was super early on building chatbots for Facebook Messenger. And we were building custom bots for music festivals and artists. And it was really fun, but it wasn't a sustainable business at that time because we were just too early. We didn't have large language models
again,
like we do today.
What year was this about?
That was 2016.
Okay. And you were looking at Watson at this time?
Yeah, Watson was at 2015, 16 timeframe. Yeah, we were working with Watson. We had this little partnership, and it didn't fully work out the way that we wish it would have. Because we really wanted to be able to help take a 911 operator that's really good at their job, seasoned at their job, and be able to replicate them, right? Because you can't scale humans as fast as we can scale software, right?
Sure.
So we thought during disaster relief efforts and during massive chaos, you would need to be able to have a lot of different people to be able to service all these different incoming calls, because majority of people call 911 even though it's not an emergency. So how do you provide triage on all those different calls was like the big goal. And it just didn't work out the way we thought it was. So we pivoted like any other entrepreneur. And then we got into like less mission critical type applications of chatbots for like customer service and marketing, and where people's lives are not really necessarily on the line.
Right.
And that's where I got into being a community builder. So I knew like up in San Francisco, there was like 2 chatbot meetup groups, and I was like, LA doesn't have any, so I should be the guy that starts it. So I started a meetup group, a casual hanging out at bars and places that we could like, law firms, anyone that would give us a free space to build, conversations around the future of how chatbots can change people's lives in different industries. And when the startup failed, I decided to turn that meetup group into AILA, and build it into a nonprofit organization. And, fast forward now, 8 years later, we're 16,000 people plus on our newsletter. We sell out almost every event we have. We have an amazing team of ambassadors. So we cover all different topics of interest, from climate tech to healthcare to biotech to obviously media entertainment. And it's been a really cool ride of just building this community and learning from others and helping as much as I can with other people's dreams.
So is AI always been sort of the center of what you've been building in terms of technology? Like when you started going down the path of looking at AI, and specifically you started with them as chatbots, right? That was the start of this everything. So when you started with chatbots, is that sort of always been like, okay, I see a benefit to these bots in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, even back then, it wasn't really AI in any way. It was decision trees. So pre-canned responses with a ridiculous dialogue flow, right? Just like all these different decision trees, if then that type statements.
Right. And
so it wasn't even AI. It was more like the precursor, I guess, to what we see today with these large language models, like using ChatGPT and so forth and Claude. And so I saw the tremendous value because of just the ability to be able to take a corpus of data and be able to, interact with it in some meaningful way. And it was like, in that time period, I saw, okay, there's something here. We're so early that it's kind of like, gluing things together to try to make them work. And it never was a great experience. So like, even like when we were pitching big artists about like how like Steve Aoki or whoever, right? And you're like, hey, what if you could have a one-to-many conversation with all your fans? And some people were very interested in that. And some other people thought that would be very, dishonest maybe, or just like disingenuous, because, they wanted to be authentic. And authenticity is really important to most people, right? Mm-hmm. And so that wasn't really lending itself to certain demographics and certain types of artists, at least, that we were working with. And that's why our company didn't really work out, along with a lot of others in that time. Like a lot of startups died thinking that chatbots had arrived, and like 2016 to 2018 was like the years of the chatbots, right? And this hype cycle. Mm-hmm. And it died off. Only a few companies were, I think, got some acquisitions. And then now it's like riding that wave until where we're at today. where, November of 2022, when, finally ChatGPT came out of, instead of just being Playground, it was, this pretty UI that made it really easy for anyone with that knows English to be able to communicate with it. And then fast forward now, it feels like every week or even every day, there's a new development, in the LLM or the diffusion model type arms race.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously I think we have an idea, but let's assume that there's people that are still trying to understand what the transformers, right? So those are the big things, the T and GPT. Like how did that change things from the older chatbots to now these new chatbots? Like how did that change everything?
Yeah, like I said, so like the chatbots before were more, again, decision trees and maybe using some machine learning in their processing. And now because of the transformers, you can now have this tokenization system where people can basically predict the next word, right? So it's like an overglorified spell check, understanding, predicting what the next word would be. And then you can have these kind of really interesting back and forths with these AI agents. When before it was like, if it was it was all pre-canned, right? It wasn't really, developing those sentences and those conversations on the fly. It was more just going to a repository of things that you and your writing team had already pre-selected, and depending on the circumstances, right, of that conversation, it would surface that result. Now you can have these crazy hallucinations back and forth with someone, whether it's, talking to a book and the book is the corpus, right? Is the source of truth, or is just the World Wide Web, right? Which is obviously filled with a lot of crap, and fake news and misinformation. So it's interesting to see how today people are leveraging this new type of transformers to be able to have these interesting conversations, but then also how are you using it for helping write a script or helping write copy, or companies like, not ChatGPT, but it's, there's like another company, this large language company, that where you can have your own branded voice and it can help you write, basically content marketing for you on your behalf. And so it's just allowing people to at least get over that writer's block problem that we all suffer from, right? Staring at a blank page or a blank screen and just like trying to figure out how to just get started. I see the value in like these type of tools being able to at least get you started. It's not going to be 100%, the end result of what you need, maybe 70, and then it's your job as the human to take that 30% and get it to a place of whatever you're building, whether it's an image or a piece of content, over the finish line, right? Yeah,
for sure. I do want to get into the creative benefits of using these tool sets, which I think is very interesting. But I do want to talk a little bit, because you did mention that you started with, triage and very important life choices that has happened, right? And so introducing transformers into a situation that would involve that would be challenging, right? Because of the transformative nature of things and actual hallucinations. You can't vet the answers that it will give you like you would if it's a pre-canned answer that you wrote yourself and you know that that's a truth or can validate it in some ways, right? So how do you deal with that authenticity and people believe it? Because one thing I do notice, like the way that the phrases come out of GPT or anything else are very convincing that they know exactly what they're talking about, and they may be 100% wrong, right?
Yep.
So how do we deal with that?
The overconfidence. I mean, I think, where was I? There was this one gentleman at an event I was at late last year, and he was saying how, like, think of ChatGPT as the smartest friend you know, right? Drunk. So it's like they always have an answer, even when they're not right, and they're always super confident about whatever they're talking about, right? And they can talk your ear off if you let them.
Sure.
And I always thought that was funny because, right, it's like, it's drunk. It's like sometimes it's factually correct, and then there's a lot of other times where it like trails off and it's not really there, but it's so confident that you just still believe it.
Right.
And then it starts using the words delve, right?
Yeah.
And you realize, oh wait, why are we using the word delve so much? Oh, it's because these large language models were trained. Were being fine-tuned by people from like South Africa, where the word delve is more commonly used.
Interesting.
But yeah, I feel like with this, exactly. When you're dealing with life threatening like situations, like definitely developing an AI 911 operator, that's why you haven't seen it yet.
Right.
Like what we were trying to build right back in 2015, 2016, still hasn't been built fully yet because of these issues around liability, really.
Right.
Like what if the bot does say something that's incorrect? Like I think you've been seeing, there's some memes that came out a few weeks ago about, I think it was Google's new, I forget the featured name, but basically when you search for something, instead of double clicking into a website or clicking into a website, it would surface the results on their main page. Mm-hmm. And people were saying, okay, how do you make pizza? Or whatever. And then it was telling you to like use Elmer's glue for it, so it would be more sticky or something. And it's like, where are you getting this data? Well, it was surfacing the data from Reddit. And obviously people were trolling people on Reddit, but somehow that information was making it to the search results in Google. So if you didn't know any better, or whatever, you would believe that, oh, I need to use Elmer's glue in this pizza recipe, or name a few other different examples of that. And that's definitely a great example of where AIs can go drastically wrong.
Sure. And
then who's to blame? Who's liable when someone takes that advice and uses it and it doesn't get the intended results?
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about, in terms of writing, right, and coming up with stories. Let's talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages of that. So first, you mentioned, that this is a good way to start off your ideas. You have an idea, but you don't know how to start it, or you want some way a jumping off point. So explain a little bit about your ideas there, and then how that could benefit people first.
Yeah. I feel like, creatives we're very insecure, right? We constantly are perfectionists, right? We constantly want the best out of whatever we're doing. And because of that, we sometimes rarely will show early versions of a creative project because we're not there yet. I don't want to show this to anyone else because I'm fearful of potential, them looking at me like, oh my God, he's an idiot. I thought he was a genius, but now I'm seeing this early side of this project and wow, what a dummy or whatever, right? And we get insecure that someone might have that type of feeling, and then that would hurt us even further. And I think that what's really awesome about these AI agents and working with an AI agent as a co-pilot, right, as this collaborative tool, is that there's not judgmental, right? It's just a piece of software. It's just math, right, that you're working with on a certain project where you can bounce ideas off of it, and it never gets restless. And it might surface some other aha moment for you that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, right? You might have those blinders on when you're working on a project, right? Because you're so close to it. And you don't have to worry about them telling your secrets to someone else, or hopefully not, right? Like you would if you had a writing partner or some other type of creative collaborator who was human, because you would just start thinking in your head maybe more crazier thoughts about their opinion of you or how you're thinking about things. When of course you're just kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Sure.
And that's why I feel like it's really, I think it's gonna really help a lot more people get through not just therapy maybe, but also through, the process of a creative endeavor earlier on, and be able to basically, I think Paul Trillo said it best, fail faster, right? As a creative, you constantly can, constantly be testing and iterating and having basically more bites at the apple by himself before he has to show it to any creator has to show it to the world or even any other human collaborators. And I think that's where you're going to start hopefully unlocking some more visionary type experiences and stories, because you're going to be able to have, I guess, more iterations of making that creative project better, with a lot more ideas coming at you through these AI agents that are kind of your assistants.
What are some of the challenges and some of the things that people need to be aware of if they're going to start using these tools, and how they could affect or negatively affect their creative process?
The negative side, I mean, obviously there's a big concern about copyright, right, and a huge concern about copyright, and where the data came from, the source data, right, came from for all of this, for these different large language models and these diffusion models. Like Midjourneys and so forth. And so definitely people are very afraid that, AI is just completely plagiarizing. And so I feel like using it as a collaborative tool Having it more of an internal, like more in the development side is still the safe zone of utilizing these tools, right? Because you're not necessarily selling something yet. And so I feel like the challenges are going to be around, okay, how much having to prove yourself as an artist to the rest of the world that this was you, that whatever you put out into the world is you. And that's why I really think as we move into a world filled with more and more synthetic media, behind the scenes, of how you actually develop a creative project, whether it's a screenplay, a film, or whatever, behind the scenes are going to become more and more important and actually maybe more valuable than the actual end product that you develop, because it's going to really show like behind the curtain of how you and your team, or even by yourself, were able to overcome these certain challenges and develop that creative and the creative project, utilizing these tools and showing that you really were at the helm of it, and really that it was your ingenuity utilizing these new tools that made this come together, instead of what a lot of people I think believe, because they don't really, we're always afraid of what we don't know, where people just think, oh, that commercial was created by AI. They must have just, typed in a prompt and poof, they had this Under Armour or whatever, right, commercial. When really, no, there was a full team behind it, and they use those AI tools and only certain components of it all. And so, yeah.
I mean, this is not dissimilar from the battle we had back in the early 2000s. So people, this was just done on computers, when, there's a team of visual effects artists working on those computers to make that happen. I agree. Yeah. But let's go back to a little bit to the copyright issue, because I think I really want to, I really would love it for someone like you to answer some of these questions, because I think it's important for us to sort of have that perspective. Obviously, by its very nature, that's what LLMs do. They copy data, right? So copyright is right in there, the thing. They copy the data and they transform it and they do a new version of it, which, arguably can say is what any creative person does, is they learn from everything that's around them, including everything they've been educated on, and transform that. But at the same time, source material and everything else is very important, because an artist who might be using these tools might be achieving something that is very much copyrighted, and may not be aware that they're doing that, because the tool is just saying, oh, I'm just going to give you exactly, I'm going to give you a Marvin Gaye song because that's basically what you're asking for. And like, wait a minute, I didn't mean to do Marvin Gaye. I don't even know who Marvin Gaye is, right? So like that, how do you actually like think about copyright? And do you think that, what are your thoughts in terms of how copyright needs to be addressed? Both, in terms of legally and as well as socially, from both users and people who are protecting their own work?
That's a great question. And I'm not a lawyer or anything, but...
Neither of us are.
But I know that no matter what, the lawyers will always have jobs in the future, right?
Right.
Because this will always be coming up, will always be a concern as new technologies continue to unravel. But to answer it, I feel like it's so difficult because, you have these products like Suno now, yes, or Udio, right? Where it's like very blatantly, like totally stole all that music. And like, if you want, like you said, a Marvin Gaye song, it can make that for you immediately. And it's like, how is that fair? Like, how is that like not illegal? Right. Like, this is going back to the old Napster days, yep, right? Where now the RIAA, right, or whoever I forget is suing them. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting to see what's going to transpire from that, because how else do you make a product that good without stealing, right? And yeah, you can make the arguments about, wow, if you're an artist, right, you're learning the piano or you're learning the guitar or any instrument or how to draw or whatever, you copy first, right? You're going to learn other people's songs first. Mm-hmm. Before you start making your own songs, or you're going to learn how to draw by drawing someone else's work and sketching or outlining and so forth, right? So it's always this whole process of how you learn a new skill, a new artistic skill, is through copying other artists that you admire or that came before you, of course. And so people usually like to make that argument in that's during this type of discussion. Mm-hmm. Well, like a computer's just doing it just like a human would, but obviously it's a computer, so it has a better memory, right? Than a human, and it can actually, utilize that training data more effectively than a human brain could, right? And I guess there's some merit behind that, correlation right there, similarity between the two, but I don't know. I still feel like it's like this inspiration, right? You can be inspired by someone else, like you said, when it comes to music or whatever, and maybe you want to make something that's similar to it. But then you're right. How does then an artist? I don't have the answer. How does the artist protect themselves? Right. That is like if you're going to go try to make. I love Wes Anderson, and I want to make a film that's similar to Wes Anderson's style, right? Which is very, he has so many different components that make a Wes Anderson film a Wes Anderson film. Mm-hmm. But I want to copy that style. Like, is that legal? I don't know. But I think it's hard to go back to your question, I think it's hard for me, the end user, to understand, and get to your point, like if I'm using these tools and I am really honestly trying to develop something that's original, do I have to fear that I might have, later down the road find out that, oh my God, this thing that I totally thought was original actually was stolen from, this amazing artist out in Helsinki, mm-hmm. right? Well, I never would have known about until I got that, lawsuit against me or whatever, right? Or cease and desist. Or the other side of the equation, how do you as an artist protect your work? And people are doing things like Nightshade, right? Where they're poisoning, they're putting these certain pixels into their artwork online so that they can poison the models that are scraping the web. But it's a crazy Wild West that we're in right now. It's definitely the Napster times. I don't have the answer. I just mm-hmm. like more questions, if anything, about like how does you, the end user, use this use these tools effectively and honestly, right, without malicious means. And then on the other side, as the people that are being stolen from, how do they protect their work in the long run?
Right.
And I really don't have the good answer on that yet. I was at a group. I was with a group of musicians a month ago up in Malibu, and they were asking me about the challenges about using these AI tools because none of them have really used them. Mm-hmm. And I asked them, like, wait a second, like, remind me, don't you guys only make money not from streaming, right? And they're like, no, we don't make money from streaming. Sure. Like, all right, but you make money from touring and from merchandise, right? And they're like, yeah, that's how we make our money. I was like, cool. Well, a human has to still be around that, right? Technically, you're still going to have to be out there on tour and selling merchandise with your brand in order to make a living. So utilizing these tools,
yeah, but no one's going to see them if people are just listening to AI. If people aren't listening to them because they're listening to AI versions of them, right?
I guess that's the scary part. It's like, I don't know, would we live in a world where people are just like, I'd rather just listen to this and then not go and see them in person? I don't know.
I agree with you. I don't know the answer to that. But I just know that they also get money from licensing their work to things like movies. Like if I'm going to make a short film and I want to use, a Sinatra song, I'll just I can license, New York, but that's way too expensive. So I'll just make the fake one and then I just use that one. Right. Yeah. So
that is, yeah. I mean, definitely the licensing industry. I mean, for sure, for short films, it's like, you do something similar enough and you get away with it and then you own the rights to it, right? Technically.
Ish.
I see. Ish, right? Like question, like asterisks right there. But you're right. Like when it comes to those type of use cases, you're right. Like the whole music scoring composition industry is going to be pretty dismantled because of these tools, right?
Well, they're the ones that really practiced this with lawyers, right? I mean, they back in the Napster days, they really lawyered up. So they've got the armor, they've got the army of people that know how to deal with this, right? It's the concept artists and the other artists that don't have the resources to do it and stuff. So I'm curious about in the concept art. I mean, do you know, like obviously, do you aware of people like Carla Ortiz, who's out there going to the Congress and actually trying to develop legislation on this? And what are your thoughts on trying to get laws passed on this and trying to actually protect artists and stop LLMs from just going ahead and taking whatever they want to learn from, right? Is there actually some guardrails around things, legally speaking, not ethically speaking? Because I think calling ethical AI is like saying cage-free chickens. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah. I like that. It's interesting. So legally, I think we're all screwed no matter what because, right, the internet has no borders.
Sure.
Right? If I'm going to develop a company, an AI company in California or just in general in North America, right now it's kind of the Wild West, but there's certain new laws and new regulations coming up,
Yep.
Especially even in the state of California. And it's like, cool, well, if you really want to do that thing, maybe you just go elsewhere to build it. I think that's going to be the challenge, right? It's like people, no matter what, are going to do what they want to do. And if they can't do it in a certain region because of certain legal ramifications and so forth, then they'll just go to a different region, whether it's Asia, South America, wherever, right?
Sure.
And get away with it and then sell their services from that safe haven.
Right.
And so even though we should have some guardrails and some type of protection around how large language models, how these different companies are scraping data from the web, what is public use. Like, when the CTO of OpenAI was asked point blank on an interview about the training data, and she said like publicly available and blah, 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 and was very hand wavy and like not really answering the direct question. It obviously grew a lot of concerns because even the CEO of YouTube says like, nope, for sure they used our data without permission.
Right.
But like, what's going to happen from that, right? I haven't followed that story directly, but it's like those are two huge companies that have the means to be able to fight. And when you have a small artist that has no voice, no legal team behind them, then they're kind of screwed.
I find it fascinating. You mentioned the internet is like this open wild web, but interestingly, I haven't thought about it, and I'm sure you're aware of this story, but on any website you make, there's a text file called robot.txt that everyone doesn't realize is there, right? But it allows you to manually say, yes, you can scrape this page or not scrape this page. And it's completely based on the honor system that the crawlers will read that and honor whether they scrape your data or not, right? And so people have been ignoring it for decades. And then suddenly, now all these LLMs are out there, and people are furiously typing, adjusting their LLM so that the LLMs doesn't read their page or not read the page. And then what's interesting is that there's a new AI search tool that's going to be, basically a GPT of some kind, but it's a search tool that has been caught ignoring those TXT files and basically not honoring the fact that it's reading data that it hasn't had the right to do. So how do you deal with that?
Again, I don't know. I mean, like, as a guy who used to build websites when I was in high school, back when there was this writing HTML files and frames before CSS, and I was like early GeoCities kind of guy, so for sure, I definitely know what you're talking about with robot.txt. I mean, there is no honor among thieves, right? Yep. And so like this, it's just going to get more out of control. And again, like I said, like whether you're a kid in America doing this or someone else in a foreign country, it's inevitable it's going to happen. And I don't know, even when you have like these new rulings where you have, probably every website you go to now, right, ask permission about the cookies. And like, can we track you? And you can say deny all, approve all, or they make it really complicated to deny everything and you have to go through it. Anyways, it's a real big hassle. And I still think that that's like, who's checking to make sure that after you say no, that they're still not just, scraping your data, or not scraping, but at least, tracking you. Like it's still, on the honor code for every webmaster.
Sure.
And who is really going to be checking your database to make sure, wait a second, Joey didn't say approve that you could have his information, but I found that in your database. No, because no one's showing their databases off, right? Yeah. And so I think, again, it's the Wild West. there is no accountability on the internet. And I think that's why people are like, well, that's why we need this new internet, the Web3, it's all going to be on the blockchain, and then we'll be able to track everything. Right. And I don't know if I fully buy into that, but there is no accountability on the internet. So even what you're talking about, like, I don't know, how do you police the internet, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's
the only functioning anarchy that we have.
It really is. And I think it's going to be impossible. I think this is how the internet has been run for so many years, I don't know if there's any way going back. I think it's just, it's unfortunately the way it is, right? and people steal all the time off the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not necessarily saying that, well, we're just going to have to live with it is the right idea either. But I do believe that it's, people need to be at the very least educated on what the process is, right?
Definitely. I mean, digital education is huge, especially when it comes to youth and elders more, right? Mm-hmm. Because like the amount of fraud you're going to be getting now because of AI when it comes to like robocallers or people trying to impersonate you or your kids or whatever, right? Is this going to get out of hand? It's already getting out of hand, but it's going to get even worse, and probably even worse leading up to our election, where you're going to have even more deep fakes of some sort, right? Impersonating someone that you probably already trust to be able to then, get money or something out of you. And I think we're just going to have more and more guardrails around or ways to be able to track content, right? So everyone's talking about like a watermark system, but then it's like, okay, what's to say that an AI can't just spoof another watermark to say that actually this is real?
Right.
And I think it was Ukraine came out with a new AI avatar that's supposed to be talking on behalf of the ministry, talk on behalf of them, right? Do all these updates, and it's this AI avatar. And they'd say that, but you'll know it's real because you'll have this QR code in the bottom right corner. And if you scan that QR code, you'll go straight to our government website and you can see the full transcript. I was thinking to myself, like, that sounds cool, except what if that QR code was a malicious QR code? So when you scan it, it actually, goes to a bad website, and you get malware on it, right? And then poof. So everyone's thinking about these different mechanisms in order to be able to track real or fake content.
Yeah.
But I think that we live in a crazy world where it's very easy, if you really know, if you are sophisticated enough, to be able to spoof that stuff and fake that for very much malicious reasons.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I did a lot of sort of research in digital humans, and there was a lot of discussion around 2020 talking about people concerned was, they're going to use deep fakes during the 2020 election. And you know what? They didn't need to. People just straight up lied, and that worked just fine. So someone just lies and people believe it. They believe what they want to believe. So I don't necessarily think that you need a lot of technology to teach people how to lie. I think people can lie also on their own. Sorry, we can go down a rabbit hole of this one before too long, but I want to get back to some of the creative stuff and challenges out there, right? Because, as in its very nature of how AI tools work is, you mentioned they're predicting the next word that needs to be in a sentence. They're predicting. So they're giving you the most logical choice for the next word, right? So as such, they're designed to be the average of the most average result. So there's the chances of getting outliers, chances of getting something that's beyond predictable is harder, right? So you get Marvin Gaye, but you get like average Marvin Gaye, not like the best Marvin Gaye. So how do you deal with that process of it, and how do you, if you're creative, and make it a good Marvin Gaye, right? Or good you instead of Marvin Gaye, shall we say?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any worthwhile project, I think it's gonna be hard to find really worthwhile projects that were purely just done by AI. To your point about it being average and also being, only based off, right? It's nothing net new. Mm-hmm. It's just based off what it's learned from before. And so that's why I really think that these tools are great as these collaborative partners. You can maybe see things in different lights and through different lenses. But then at the end of the day, it's your taste. It's your constant obsession of making it better that will then take you from an average baseline of a derivative that you use maybe a tool like one of these AI tools for. And then it's you constantly layering on top of that until you get something that you believe is hot. That is like, this is what I want to go with, right?
Sure.
But the first like iteration, the first like prompt you get, the prompt you use, and then you get back some stuff. Yeah, totally average. And it's just going to take a lot more time and, again, more iterations until you hopefully find something that works. Or maybe you don't, and then you go back to the drawing board and then you start from zero again. And then you got this little average, milestone that you used AI for, and then you've got to figure out how to take it to the peak. And so you're right. No, I think there's going to be more mundane, more crap content out there, and the bar is rising about what is quality storytelling, what's quality art. And hopefully that then inspires more people to be able to even create better work, right? And I think also because of the democratization of these tools, right, you're going to be helping people that otherwise couldn't write or speak, or people that are just never had the access to be able to tell their stories. And so hopefully the dream, right, is that we're going to be seeing even more interesting stories unveil themselves because of the democratization of these tools plus the internet, right?
Sure.
Like when we had this conversation with Nikola from Wonder Dynamics last night, he came from a small town in Yugoslavia, and his dream was to come to Los Angeles, to Hollywood, to make it, right? And then he realized, while here, like so many people realize, it's a culture of permission.
Yes.
You have to be given permission to be able to make that film, to have that TV show or whatever it is, right? Someone has to give you permission, which is crazy. And that's why I could go on, but like, that's why he wanted to develop Wonder Dynamics, was because he wanted that democratization for storytellers just like himself that came from a small town and didn't know anybody in the industry, but still wanted to be able to tell his stories.
Sure. And
so I think there's gonna be a lot more crap. There's gonna be a lot more just synthetic media for the sake of it. It's cluttering our internet. It's just a lot of, things I would never pay money for, things I see my feeds, and then you're going to have that next level of creativity. I think that's going to come out of that, where then you really see who the true artists are, because they actually perfected they already had talent, right? And now this is just helping them maybe see life a little bit differently.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's something very interesting about that. Now, this is perfect segue, by the way, because it leads me to the community. Like, you've been very focused on figuring out how to build a community and how to have these conversations going. So let's talk a little bit about what you've built and what you're trying to do, and how Fabric works and how all of these different things work, so you can try to find these ways of interacting with people in this space.
Yeah, so AILA I've been running for 8 years, and during that process, I've been able to meet some amazing people. And then in the last 2 years, I started a new startup called Fabric, and we're really envisioning and building this next generation content studio. And so instead of us building technologies ourselves, or even developing our own content necessarily ourselves, we're building out this ecosystem of this like next generation of what Hollywood could look like. And that means we work directly with startups, building tools that can fit in with these workflows. We do a lot of consulting and advising on strategy and how to think through utilizing tools within these different workflows for studios and for post-production companies. And so it's usually more on the look dev side of things, or some of it could be on the other end of the visual effects side of things, but most of it really is actually happening in the pre-production side, where you're just using it as means for just conveying your thoughts from your brain, like what you were talking about before, concept art, or even doing like pitch books, right? Building pitch decks, which is like any entrepreneur has to do, whether you're a startup or in an entrepreneurial or in a creative field. And these events we do is about building that community around other like-minded people that constantly want to, improve themselves and their craft, right? Majority of people that come to, into this industry, right? Like, we all have our own stories we want to tell. And usually we're stuck working on other people's projects and helping other people make their dreams come true, that usually we can't even work on our own dreams.
Sure.
Right. And so I think that is an interesting time period where maybe you get some time back to yourself to be able to then work on those side projects that might see the light of day because of that democratization. And so I'm really passionate about finding really great, smart people in the media, entertainment, creator economy kind of space that embraces emerging technologies like AI, and building the culture around that, and that people just want to, do better, do good, and do it in a responsible manner for sure is very key. So definitely we have a no a-hole type of a policy in our organization, and all is like, we just want really good-hearted people that want the best out of each other.
What have you, since you've been involved in this, obviously you're very, you've done things like AI on the lot or things of that nature, which I think are great. What has the response of Hollywood been? Both the old school Hollywood and the next generation Hollywood, and how do they differ, and how do they sort of respond to this idea?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when we started AI on the lot last year, it happened to be, we were planning it for months. It happened to be 2 weeks after the writer's strike. So writer's strike, I think, was like May 3rd or something, early May, and then we were May 16th. And it was nuts because we thought we were going to have to cancel. We thought all these different things, right? We thought we were going to have protesters at the event because it was up in Hollywood. And at the end of the
Specifically
day,
because the writers were protesting AI tools, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we had a writers panel. We had a panel with showrunners who wanted to talk candidly about how, because they were using it, how they were using it, and how there was nothing to be worried about. Like how, like there's no way in hell an AI is going to be able to write a commercially viable script. Like we still have our day jobs. If anything, it's going to help us do more with less.
Sure.
And again, even that was also a concern because they were shrinking the writers' rooms, right?
Right.
And there's also because the seasons TV seasons are smaller, so there's less work. And so they're like, oh shit, like now you're going to bring AI in here and even produce even more, less work. Like then where the humans play a role. And so it's a very, obviously sensitive concern. And so we actually had to pull back on that one topic around the writer's room of how large language models fit into the writer's room, or maybe they don't fit in. And we weren't able to have that conversation back then last year. But luckily this year we were able to have that conversation. And it was very inspiring because you had certain writers like Matt Nix talk about how it's like the invisible worker. And I think there's a lot of people that talk about this in other industries where, we're not using it. We don't use AI in Hollywood. These are all old Hollywood people saying we don't use AI, but you're going to have a lot of great ideas coming out of the bathroom, right? So people are just going to walk off, do their thing, and come out. Oh my God, I had a breakthrough idea,
right.
And it's like, okay, cool, but like let's be real. You probably went and used some type of tool or got made a phone call and have someone else do it for you, whatever, right? And be able to leverage it. And so I feel like it's interesting how everyone has to be very protective of how they speak about using AI in the industry right now, especially the studios, because there's still the IATSE negotiations going on, which is below the line type workers. And they're just being very cautious in how they speak about it. But at the end of the day, I believe that all these studios, everyone's testing. Everyone's doing some type of form of R&D about it because they have to stay competitive. They have to make sure that they're not going to miss the boat, especially when everything in Hollywood is pretty much not working out so well right now.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of job loss and not enough projects, and it's just a really tough time in the industry. And so everyone has to be very careful about how they speak about it. But yeah, definitely there's a mixed bag of people who are pitchforks and coming after everyone and saying, even in the DMs of these AI artists I follow, like very nasty stuff. Like a friend of mine was telling me, he does tutorials of teaching people on Instagram and YouTube about how to use these tools. And he'll get, a ton of negative, like really dark, twisted, like even death threats. Saying, I provide for my family, I'm an editor, and you're teaching people how to use these tools that are going to displace me, and I will, come after you if you keep this up, because I won't be able to provide for my family. And it's this crazy, and so he's like one of my friends, they're having these type of conversations through DMs or on comments, where it's that concerning, right? That people are actually making death threats to artists that are just trying to educate and develop tutorials. And so it's weird how then you have the other side of the coin where you got people that are embracing it and loving it. And, oh my God, this is so crazy. How they can use these tools, to create a song, create a film, create a wacky little video they post on socials, whatever. Yeah. And so definitely there's definitely a mixture of hate and love. And then also just unknown of just, people just don't know what to make of it yet.
Sure.
but I stay in such a weird, I'm like in the middle of it all, right? And so I definitely wish I could I need to get outside of it more because I'm in this bubble, right?
Sure.
So in my bubble, it's like people embracing it, people trying to learn each new tool. And every time there's a new tool, they're trying to working hours every day, like testing, figuring out how it works, and then trying to develop some little projects here and there. And that's the world I live in. So I'm always in a world of just a bubble of people constantly embracing it. And I need to probably drift out of my bubble sometime very soon. So I really want to understand how the rest of the world see it. So right now I'm very biased, obviously, because I'm just right in the middle of it all.
Right.
But I hear from my friends that are these influencers, teaching people about how they use these tools there's a very dark side to this.
It's really good that you say that, because I think that people need to do both things, right? I mean, in the fact that you say you acknowledge on your own that you need to stay outside your bubble because you want to get other people's perspective on this, and you acknowledge that there is a different perspective, right? And I feel that the same is true for others, right? They may think of anyone who uses it. I know people who would say anyone that uses anything AI based is criminal. Just should be criminal and should go to jail, right? And it's kind of amazing that if even by saying, I think some of these tools are pretty cool, people feel that you are enabling crimes. And it's really kind of sad that there's no discussion that's happening in this area, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a community builder. We do events, we bring people together on a regular basis to have these type of conversations. But like I said, it's like I'm so biased because I am in the middle of it all.
Right.
That it's weird how I don't hear the hate. I'm not surrounding myself by people that are against it as much as the people that are embracing it. And I definitely would love to hang out with more of the haters. You know, I would love to be out there. I think Paul. I like referring back to Paul Trill because he's so great. Mm-hmm. He talks about I think it's cool now to hate AI. I want to be one of those guys smoking cigarettes. It's talking shit on AI. I want to be one of those guys. I'm the counterculture now is hating on AI.
Oh right, sure. Sure.
And I was like, that would be cool.
That's
actually.
People hitting on CDs people. And wanting to go back to records and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? But yeah, I would love to have that. Even we were thinking about this for AI a lot this year, where we were thinking about having a big debate.
Sure.
And it would be pro against it. And we were really thinking about how that could work. And then at the end of the day, we did not do it for a number of different reasons. But I still want to do it. I still want to have a real debate with two prominent people that are super pro and against AI.
Yeah.
Around creativity.
Yeah. I'd love to, that's something I would love to work with you on, honestly speaking. So that's something that would be great because I do have some big connections on both sides of things here. And I think that having someone that wants to be engaged in that conversation would be really great. So let's work on that if possible.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We'll have a cage match.
Yeah. I don't know if it needs to be a cage match. It just needs to be a conversation, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know. Well, it's so funny. We could do it on a green screen and then come change out the backgrounds depending on the mood.
Right. For sure. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is, on the creative side of things and these transforms, right? I mean, not necessarily I believe that before a lot of these tools were being enabled, creativity had actually honestly been really squashed and been regulated. Or as Nicholas said, you needed to ask permission from lawyers to tell your story, right? And it was not, and that sort of doesn't enable creativity. And I think that a lot of stories and a lot of creativity was sort of dying on the vine because of that stuff, right? That led to the point where we're just getting the same movie over and over and over again because that was the most safest thing to do because of the cost of what it takes to make movies. I'm reminded of the 1960s. And I've brought this up on in other episodes, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it. I'm reminded of the 1960s when studios thought they were going to make Western movies and Doris Day musicals forever, right? And it turns out that people were sick and tired of it, and that they'd stopped going to the movies, and that the studios almost went bankrupt, right? And they had a strike back then. It was the only other strike where they had a strike between writers and actors, both at the same time. So the last time it happened, Ronald Reagan was the head of the Screen Actors Guild, I believe, at that time. And what, when that happened, suddenly crazy, weird ideas came out. And you got movies like Easy Rider and The Godfather and things like that. Do you think that today, that you are going to have more things that deviate from the norm because of the democratization of some of these creative tools that are happening?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need more Superman. We don't need more superhero films, right, or Marvel films, right? It's been going on for too long.
Yeah,
we definitely
don't need more Star
Wars.
That's almost 50 years of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Sorry, Star Wars. I love it, but seriously,
right?
Yeah.
We need fresh takes. We need fresh looks, new protagonists, new types of storylines that hopefully will be more inspiring than just the same type of characters, the same type of plots. And so, yeah, I do think that, if you think about the different generations of Hollywood and filmmaking, right? I think right now, technically, we're maybe in the sixth revolution. And if I can remember correctly, actually, let me look. It's just we had the silent films, then we had the talkies, then we had the color film, then we had camcorders and people could create their own home films. Mm-hmm. And then we had the internet and mobile devices. And then now we're kind of getting into this whole next generation of using AI. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be this whole track, right, where you're going to have three different tracks. So you're going to have your traditional filmmakers that don't use any AI, right? They're purist. And, it's certain filmmakers like Tarantino's of the world that only will work on film.
Sure.
On celluloid. Then you're going to have the hybrid where it's going to be a mixture of human ingenuity and using AI toolings and so forth. And I think there's going to be a lot of really good, crazy, cool stuff that comes out of this middle area. Then there's going to be a third new genre of films, which are the generative AI filmmaking, right? Full new genre where you even see it on Netflix someday or whatever, right? It's just films that were purely made from Gen AI. And that does not interest me at all. The pure Gen AI stuff, in no way interests me.
Sure.
I don't think there's at least today, I don't see much soul behind any of it. There are some great storytellers that have been able to use it, and it's been pretty remarkable. But at the end of the day, it's cool. Something I'm watching on Twitter or wherever, I'm not actually going to go spend money and invest a crazy amount of time into it. It's just, wow, that guy's a great storyteller, and he was able to use those, or they were able to use those tools to create something.
Sure.
That's awesome, but still, it's kind of soulless.
Right.
I think that you're going to start seeing a lot of really cool stuff come up in the middle where you have this hybrid because it's going to lower the cost of entry, and you'll be able to have more of this democratization of new stories surfacing, and at not looking like a home film, even though maybe they use their iPhone to make it. It looks like it could have been a $10 million film made for $100,000 or whatever.
Do you have examples of what you think that is today?
I don't have really. I mean, there's guys like Dave Clark, and he has a movie that he's constantly pitching around called Other, I believe, and he's more focusing on horror films and how can you almost do the Blumhouse model, right, of just doing cheap or affordable horror films. I think look into that direction. Maybe I think maybe horror would probably be the first genre where you'll see AI being probably more embraced than others. But I think that groups like A24 are going to be utilizing or already probably are. I don't know. I can only imagine they probably are utilizing these sets of tools to tell more of their stories. But I don't have a direct pulse on something that's out there in the world today. I think we're going to be seeing some really cool stuff coming out in the next few months, hopefully, and definitely by next year, where a lot of these indies are going to hopefully have a big break, and
there's some follow-ups.
And we'll have more of these I don't know. Paul Thomas Anderson, P.T. Anderson's a good one of my favorite directors, and hopefully we have more Punch Drunk Loves or Magnolia's coming out in the woodwork. So I would love to see a new type of Magnolia, that really helps inspire us.
What about the Daniels? What about Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? Like those guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel like, they're having their moment right now, and I think they're going to come out probably with even more fantastic work.
Sure.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they're utilizing AI. I just think this at the end of the day, right, it comes down to great storytellers.
Right.
And you put the storytelling first, technology just enables it.
Sure.
So there's certain people that there's certain people that are doing it the wrong way, where they're just leading with, oh, we got this new technology, let's see what we can do, instead of just starting with the story first and then figuring out what technology helps enable that story to be the best version of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. All right. Well, cool. This has been amazing, Todd. And I'm sure we will have many more conversations. But if people want to know more about what you're doing and find out how to get involved, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn, Todd Terrazas. Find me. Put a personalized message, because I don't just accept everybody. But if you put a personalized message like you heard.
Say you listen to it on the CG Garage.
Yeah, exactly. And then, maybe I'll approve you. I'm kidding.
Sure.
But yeah, at least do a personalized note, or find me on FBRC.ai is my company's website. Join our newsletter. We maybe post once a month, if that. But that's how you can keep up with what I'm up to here in Los Angeles.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Todd. This has been really cool. Loved hearing this perspective and getting your take on it. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch. I think this is a great resource for people to understand and get a barometer of where the industry is going and how to adjust for it. And yeah, I'd love to continue this conversation.
Likewise. And let's do that debate soon.
Yeah.